Hello guys, welcome back. This is Mike from McProgramming.org. In this video, after we have this fresh install of Laravel 5.1, we are going to go over a brief little introduction into the file structure, which can be quite intimidating for a newcomer. So, what I'm going to do is, I think I was going to just go over each individual thing, but I think that's going to be quite overwhelming and quite boring. So I'm going to go over the things that we're going to need to know as a beginner. And from that point on, once you start to get the flow of how to build simple applications, you can slowly start integrating these more advanced features into your projects. So I'm just going to go over some of the simpler things that we're going to need to know. So first, we have our root folder right here, Laravel 5, and right here is an app folder, and inside of the app folder is what powers our application. We have a model right here called user.php, which is the default model that comes with our installation of Laravel. We also have HTTP, where we're going to have a routes.php file, and inside of here we're going to deal with all of the routes that this application displays. So let's say that we have a contact page. We'll deal with how to get to that contact page, such as having a GET request to contact, and then we can have a controller method right here, or we can call an anonymous function like this that just calls a view to render to show to the user. Inside of HTTP, we have controllers, we have middleware, we have request, and like I said, we have routes.php. So remember where this file is. That's very important. We won't have to worry about console or events or anything else in here for right now. We may have to get into the providers a little bit, but outside of the app, we have Bootstrap, which is where our autoloader is, and this will autoload everything into our application to make sure it works. Think of it as hardwiring all of the dependencies together to make sure our application works properly. Here we have our config folder. We have all the different files that we may need to configure. And we can go to database.php, and inside of here we can set what our default database is going to be, and right now it's set to MySQL. And in our connections array, we're going to have other arrays such as SQLite, MySQL, PGSQL, SQL SRV, and we can set all of the configurations we want. Alright, and there's quite a few other configurations in here. I'm not going to go over them right now. We have database, which we can make migrations, we can see databases, and our public folder is the root folder of our project, as I showed earlier when I was trying to set up Laravel and try to prove to you that Laravel Homestead is our best choice because it automatically sets public as our root folder. So when we compile our CSS and have our images and other assets such as JavaScript files, they're all going to be placed inside of this public folder. Resources is also a very important folder that we're going to need to pay a lot of attention to in this series. It's going to have our assets such as Sass and any other type of JavaScript that we want to put in here and compile using a cool function called Laravel Elixir, which is a gulp file that Laravel has made specifically to wrap around gulp and make the syntax 100 times easier to deal with. So inside views, this is where we have our views that is sent to the user's browser. So for instance, our welcome.blade.php file, it says Laravel 5. That is what we're seeing when we got to the home page. Alright? And so we're going to be creating a bunch of views, and that's what is going to be seen by the user. What else can I show you? We're going to have tests right here. This is where our unit tests will be to make sure that we can test our files to make sure that we're getting exactly what our files are supposed to do. So I'm not going to go over too much of that in this tutorial, but that is a very important thing that Laravel wanted to focus on, so that is why it's built into the main Laravel application. And vendor just stores all of the dependencies that we downloaded with Composer to have Laravel function correctly. Our .env is our environment file, and this just holds all of our environmental variables such as DB host, database, username, and password. You may be wondering why in our config database.php we have all the configurations right here. Why can't we just put the host right here, the database name, the username, and the password right here? Well, the answer is because when we post this to GitHub, well, all of this is going to be visible. So what we can do is we can set an environment variable and have this point to our passwords from this .env file. And then I know what you're thinking is, well, why can't they just go and look at that inside of GitHub? Well, we also have a git ignore file, and what this does is it shows all of the files or directories that should not be pushed to GitHub and should not be watched by Git on your local machine. So this is a great protection to keeping people from knowing your database passwords or any other sensitive information such as your mail server information and so on. So down here we have Artisan, which is our PHP Artisan tool. It's a command line interface that allows us to generate controllers and models and make our migrations and much more. I'm going to go over that in the next tutorial. That's going to become your best friend when working with Laravel because it is kind of tedious. If I wanted to make a new controller, to come in here to app, go to HTTP, go to controller, and create a new controller, and then write in the code. So it automatically generates boiler code for our controller and much more. It generates our migrations for our database, and I'll get into what a migration is because you may not know at this point, but that's okay. We're going to get into all of that. And like I said, our gulp file is, if you know anything about front-end programming, gulp is a tool that automates the process of compiling Sass or less into CSS and also compiling CoffeeScript or TypeScript or even ECMAScript into regular old vanilla JavaScript. And gulp will automatically know to compile this app.scss class, for instance, and put it in public CSS /app.css. So that's really cool, and it does all this behind the scenes so you don't have to worry about that, especially because Laravel is more designed for the back-end programmer, but it's starting to get into front-end tools to make the back-end programmer have a much easier time dealing with front-end applications, or giving the tools to the front-end developers that may be working on the same project and giving them the same tools they're familiar with. So this is really great. I really love Laravel 5.1 because it's bringing in everything together much better than Laravel 4 had. So what else do we have? We have package.json, and this just handles all the dependencies necessary for gulp to work. We're bringing in Laravel Elixir and Bootstrap Sass. We have phpunit.xml, and this just has pretty much all the configurations that we need for PHP unit to work, and that's about it for now. So in the next tutorial, we're going to get into how to use the PHP Artisan command line tool. You may not like using command line tools, but once you see how fast this works, you're going to love it. So join me in the next tutorial to use the PHP Artisan command line tool, and after that, we're finally going to get into actually coding. So stay tuned and join me in the next tutorial.